Our film begins with Kate, and she sees a nightmare that always repeats in her sleep, and she is entering the hospital and being pregnant to have her third child. But doctors told her baby was born dead and drowned in blood, and that's what makes her afraid of her sleep. And she goes to pick up her daughter Max from deaf school. She eventually talks to her husband that she sees the idea of adoption as a good idea, and the love we loved for our daughter who died, they can give it to an adopted girl. And the next day they go to St. Mariana's house for girls. John goes upstairs and takes care of a beautiful, quiet and nice girl who paints with herself. He enters and greets her and knows that her name is Esther, and finds that Kate came and introduced her to Esther, and they talk together. And they go down to the manager of the house, so that they know more about Esther. And the manager tells them the girl is Russian, but she speaks English very well, and that the family I brought to America died from the fire in their house. They ask the manager to adopt it and take him home with them. And they give her so many gifts that Dan starts to be envious because she pays all the attention. And Esther and Max go out to play snow. The morning comes and John goes to work, and before Esther comes down from her house, wears her badges, and goes to school on her first day. And Brenda's harassing Esther all day until she gets home. And Dan plays with his gun, hits a bathroom and falls to the ground, but she doesn't die. And Esther comes and asks him to kill the pigeon with the rock to relieve the bachelors because he's in charge. But he's scared and refuses to kill her. Esther kills the pigeon herself. And they go home and Esther enters the bathroom. Kate goes to her room, but she sees a hidden book, but she feels a movement behind her, leaves the book, and leaves the room. And Esther is watching the situation. And John takes the kids to play a little bit. In the presence of Brenda, Esther's girlfriend is there. Esther keeps watching her and looking at her, so much so that she's afraid of her constant look at her. And she comes behind her without feeling it and drops it from the top. Brenda falls and her legs break. And Max is watching what Esther did. The housekeeper visits John and Kate the next day. And she sits down with John and Kate in private and tells them that there's been a lot of disaster. Esther will be there at this time. One of them, for example, falls down and everyone says it was not me who did this. Or there will be a fight between two girls, and it will also be present, in other than that the house fire she was living in was a contrived fire, and it was not a coincidence. Esther hears all this and goes to Max and asks her to help her. They are looking for the keys to the workshop, and you find Esther, the key to John's safe, waiting for the supervisor to walk out of the house and go to the path she is walking from, which they are waiting for. Esther is on the road, and she causes Max to fall in front of the supervisor's car, but the supervisor can avoid it and go to check on her. But Esther comes from her back, hits her with a hammer, and then she dies. I asked Max to help her pull her out of the way. Then she goes to hide her clothes and hammer in the workshop. She threatens Max that if she admits the incident, she'll go to jail and never see her mother again. Dan sees them come down from the workshop, and Esther found out Dan saw them. And you go to him at night and tell him that if he tells anyone what he saw, you're going to slaughter him on his bed. And they arrive home. An orphanage employee calls Kate and informs her that the supervisor is missing and has not come from their last visit. Police are reportedly looking for the supervisor and find her brutally murdered near John's home. At this time, Esther's in her room. The light shines and then shows the truth about her sketches she draws, and that her drawings are all violence and fire and blood and death. And Kate finds Esther cut all the roses she was carrying under her daughter Jessica's name, and she presents it as if it were a gift, and she knows that these flowers are very dear to Kate. Kate loses her nerve and grabs Esther by the arm and tries to take roses from her, but Kate collapses from crying, and John's trying to make her calm. Esther goes to John's workshop and uses the iron compressor on her arm, which Kate grabbed and broke her arm herself. And she comes the next day, and she delivers the children to school, including Esther. Dan's books fall out of his bag, and Kate goes down to put them in his bag again. You leave Max in the car. Esther moves unnoticed, the brakes are loosened, and the car moves backwards. And Kate continues to scream that someone follows the car, and helps her until the car is stuck in an iceberg and the car stands. Her psychiatrist and John sat down with her to blame her for what had happened. She keeps saying that Esther is the reason. He orders her to join rehab, or he takes the kids and stays away from her. And Kate agrees on anything they say in exchange for not keeping her children away from her. Dan tries to help his mother and asks Max to help him to save their mother and themselves from Esther. But Esther eavesdrops on them and hears all the words. And Kate will not give up and will keep looking for anything that indicates Esther's past. And remember her Bible. You find it in the middle of many pictures, written on it Bible, Swarm. She contacts the foundation and asks them about a girl who was adopted by an American family. But he replied that Swarm is not an orphanage, but a mental hospital. At the same time, Dan goes to look for the evidence Esther hid in his workshop. But she was faster than him, collecting all the evidence. And you meet him in the workshop, and she says it's best to burn the evidence. The workshop was burned and Dan inside, trying to get rid of Dan with evidence. Until he get out of the window of the workshop and faints. Esther goes to kill Dan with the rock, but Max cuts it open and saves her brother. And Kate is surprised by the fire, and goes to him. Dan enters the hospital and the doctors were able to save him. Esther gets up and goes to Dan's room and puts a pillow over his face and kills him. An alarm sounds from Dan's room and Kate runs to Esther, beating her and throwing her to the ground. Doctors hold her and give her a sedative. She wakes up on the hospital bed and sees John in front of her and reassures her. He's saved by Dan and she's spending the night in the hospital, and he's taking Esther and Max home. They get home, Max sleeps in her room, Esther comes and gets dressed, and John drinks alcohol. She looks at him as she completely transforms herself and wears sexually seductive clothes like a big woman, trying to behave with him as if she were his lover, and starts screaming at her and telling her that he will not talk to her orphanage to discuss her future. Then Esther goes up to her room while she is crying, and a phone comes to Kate from Dr. Vareva from Swarm. And he says Esther is a dangerous character and that she is not a child. And that she has a defect in her hormones that makes her body a child body. But in fact, she is an adult woman born in 1976. Her name is Lena, and she is 33 years old, not 9 years old. And she is one of the most violent patients who were in the hospital. She has scars on her hands and neck because of her binding and resistance to binding. And she killed 7 people, as far as they know. And that she was moving between families because of her childish shape and trying to seduce the father. And when he refuses, you kill him and kill all his family. And then you burn down the house with what it has. Kate understands that her family is in danger, and then goes home. And after John repels Esther, she breaks her room and destroys it. John goes to Esther to check on her and turns on the light that shows the truth of her drawings. He sees that all her drawings are murder, fire and death. Kate calls the police and guides them to her house. And John goes down to understand why the electricity is cut off. But he gets stabbed in the back as he walks into the house and falls to the ground. She completed stabbing John and started running after Max, who saw her stabbing her father. Kate enters her car in the house and enters her house and finds John dead on the floor. She ran to look for her daughter, and somehow Esther hit her with a gun, John, in the shoulder. And Esther is looking for Max to kill her, until Kate jumps on her from the ceiling before she kills Max and falls on her. Kate takes her daughter and runs into the woods while the police wait. They got home, but Esther disappeared from the house. She attacks Kate from her back and takes her, and they fall into a frozen lake, trying to kill her when Max finds the gun. And she tries to save her mother, shoots the bullet, and crashes into the lake. And it starts to crack from under them. Until they both fall into the water and Kate tries to get out of the lake. And holding her Esther by her feet, Kate hits her in the leg, breaks her neck, then falls into the lake and gets rid of her. She goes back to the police after saving her daughter.